I think the AI Act is a complete disaster. The EU by now has a great track record of producing stupid legislation, of which the GDPR is a great example, but the AI Act just takes things to an absolutely amazing level. First of all, the whole idea of regulating AI is absurd. It's like trying to regulate mathematics or trying to regulate a programming language. Oh, you could do evil things with Python, so we're going to regulate Python. It makes no sense. You don't regulate calculus. You don't regulate quantum mechanics because you could use it to make nuclear weapons. Regulating AI is of the same level of absurdity.
And welcome back to another episode of the 100-Year Podcast. My name is Adario Strange, and this week we have a different approach to what we're doing. We're actually going to have not necessarily a debate, but an exchange of ideas by two brilliant AI experts. First, we have, for the first time, Patrice Simard. He is one of the lead AI scientists at Irreverent Labs, based in Seattle. And we also have our returning champion, our first time ever. We have a returning champion, uh, Pedro Domingos, professor emeritus at the University of Washington, the author of The Master Algorithm. And I think both of these gentlemen have a lot to say on some of the events that have occurred in the past few weeks. Welcome in. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us.
Hi, thank you.
Patrice, finally, you and I have talked offline about some of the things that are going on in the AI space. And what I love about talking with you is that you not only look at it from a research standpoint, but you also you're good at like the speculation, kind of like thinking about, I guess, some of the science fiction scenarios that are at times ridiculous and at times somewhat plausible. So I wanted to definitely kind of inject your thoughts into kind of what's happening. And I wanted to start off with both of you to talk about the AI Act in the EU. I would say here in the States, it's kind of like a moving target in terms of legislation and regulation of AI and what happens with the models, how they're trained, what the laws are around those. But in the EU, there's been a great deal of, I guess, concern about what will happen with AI. And so they crafted this thing, and it was pretty contentious, but they finally hammered out kind of, I guess, a policy paper or guide called the AI Act. But the thing is, there's a gap. It won't actually take effect until 2026, which I think throws a lot of things into play. First of all, first of all, let me ask you: you're both from Europe, right? Originally, do I have that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So Patrice is from France and Pedro is Portugal. Yeah.
Yep.
So, as Europeans working, living, and participating in the US tech innovation cycle from abroad, like looking back toward, the continent, what do you think about what's happening in the EU? Either of you can take the lead on that.
Go ahead, Patrice. You say the intelligent things first.
So this is not the first time, right? GDPR was a regulation on data that has been enacted that's more severe in Europe and than the US. And when that happened, I was at Microsoft, and we had to do handstands and all sort of changing in our code to be compliant with GDPR. So whatever happens in Europe has an impact on the US, even if the laws are different in the US. Now, that said, the regulation of AI, or at least what I've seen of it, seems like a good thing to me. As long as we don't try to regulate innovation, but we regulate how it's used, then the intent at least is very good. Like companies could constantly monitor what their employees do, what relationship they have, what secrets they have, and then they could use that to discriminate against their own employee. And so having a regulation that prevents that is, I think, a good thing. At the same time, there are exceptions in the regulation that seems to make a lot of sense to me. For instance, they say, well, it would be okay to monitor if someone is falling asleep at the wheel, and that seems like a good thing, and it's a good exception. So So I think the intent is right. It's not going to get perfect on the first trial. The regulation and the technology will co-evolve, and I think we should be ready for mistake and correction the same way. Regulating human behavior with legal is a co-evolution. As we see, there are things going back to the Supreme Court and laws being changed. And so regulating behavior has to be adapted to what the behaviors are and what the intents are. So I see this as a good thing, as long as they don't try to regulate how the research is done, what algorithm can be used. I think they only regulate the behavior and how it's used, that's different than regulating the internals of what's happening inside the algorithm of AI.
Well, on the other hand, I think the AI Act is a complete disaster. The EU by now has a great track record of producing stupid legislation, of which the GDPR is a great example, but the AI Act just takes things to an absolutely amazing level. First of all, the whole idea of regulating AI is absurd. It's like trying to regulate mathematics or trying to regulate a programming language. Oh, you could do evil things with Python, so we're going to regulate Python. It makes no sense. You don't regulate calculus. You don't regulate quantum mechanics because you could use it to make nuclear weapons. Regulating AI is of the same level of absurdity. Then they have to define AI to regulate it, which of course they can't. They define it so broadly that basically anything you do with a computer could fall under that act. So this is like a disaster waiting to happen. Then they outright forbid some applications. So what you should do with AI is not regulate AI per se, but regulate specific applications like self-driving cars or drug discovery or not, which already are regulated. And what you need to think about is like how things being done by AI changes what needs to be regulated more or less, if anything. Right? If something is illegal, it shouldn't become legal because it's done with AI or vice versa. So regulating, AI, qua AI just makes no sense. And then the definition is so all encompassing that it could be applied to basically your word processor or your spreadsheet or who knows what, right? Then it has these tiers of risk. The highest level of risk are applications that it outright outlaws. The AI Act outlaws predictive policing, one of the best applications there are of machine learning, controversial in some quarters, but that's not a reason to outlaw it. That's just going to do harm. It outlaws face recognition. Now, they got some, like the government's pushed back on some things, some exceptions got worked into that, thank God, but it's still bad. It outlaws many things, but like, here's one of the best examples. It outlaws emotion recognition because it's too invasive. You can't have an intelligent conversation with someone without recognizing their emotions, and the same thing is true of AI. So they've just guaranteed that AI in Europe is going to be stupid when it interacts with people. And then there's successively lower tiers where basically what they do is they introduce all these reporting requirements, safety testing requirements. Nobody knows what they're good for. They're a cost that's going to grow. They're a bureaucracy that's going to metastasize. Not even the tech companies really know how to do the kinds of testing that they are now imposing as law. This is not a policy paper. It's going to be law in 2025. And the only shame is that 25 is not 20 million and five.
Well,
Wow.
well, Patrice, go ahead.
Well, so I guess Pedro is much more of an expert and has a very strong opinion on the topic. Um, I so okay, when drones came about, there was some regulation that were passed so that the drones could not fly in the path of commercial airplanes. And so when new technology comes in, well, we have to think that the current state of the legal system may not be perfect and adapted to what happens. So I'm just giving the benefit of the doubt that there may be tweak that needs to happen. Now, what I've read about this, and I think maybe if we disagree so strongly, we need to look into specifics. But I don't think, yeah, I didn't. What I read was not policing how the AI algorithm works, or how it was very specific use case that were designed to protect um, some human behavior in particular situation where the individual was at disadvantage. I totally agree that AI has all sort of application, and it could be very simple. Like for instance, in the police enforcement cases, you can, at the end of the day, you can count the arrest, you can detect automatically with AI how many times the Miranda rights were read, and if the numbers don't match, then you can use that to educate your policemen or to find out if something terrible happened. And so there's all sort of cases like this where AI has all sort of really great benefit because it can look at a lot of data and monitor, educate, and help things improve. Now, there are also cases where it could be abused, and I'm not, in theory, in principle, opposed to a regulation that limit the abuse. Of course, we can go way too far and get into the nightmare scenario that Pedro describes, but I'm not assuming a priori that we're going to be in that scenario.
Well, let me ask you this, Pedro. What do you think about Patrice's idea that I guess that there will be and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrice, if I'm mischaracterizing what you said earlier, that there will be kind of incremental evolutions and adjustments to the act that will allow it to, I guess, work, I guess competitively and in a feasible way compared to, I guess, what happens in the U.S. Did I
That
have that right,
is
Patrice? Is that roughly?
Yeah, well, I am absolutely certain that they are not going to get it right at first. Now, I think people learn. Is the current system of law complete garbage? And should we? I mean, no. I think it has some benefit. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. And I think it's an evolution that we can participate in.
no, but wait a second. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Look at what happened with the GDPR. The European Union makes these laws, and then they stay on the books forever until someone passes another law. Europe works by the Napoleonic Code. There's no common law to interpret the law by judges and whatnot and get things refined. And I find it delicious that here we are, two Europeans in America, and Americans, are infamous for shooting from the hip. But when it comes to legislation, regulation, Europe's policy seems to be shoot first and understand later. Of course, their understanding of AI, is going to need to evolve, and the current AI Act is all broken, which is why they shouldn't have passed it. AI is, and in fact, some of us told them that, their definitions of AI and provisions on run were going to be outdated because this has been in the works for years. We're going to be outdated before the act was even passed. And guess what? ChatGPT came out and they were scrambling to update their definitions and provisions. And it's going to be outdated the moment it comes into full force in 2025, and even more so. As a contrast to that, look at how intelligently the US legislated the internet in the 90s. AI is in that situation right now. It's a brand new thing. We don't know how it's going to turn out. Imagine where we would be if in the 1990s, the US Congress had said like, oh, internet is a dangerous thing. We need some guardrails on. We're going to put all these heavy regulations. Like, we wouldn't have half of the things that we have today. And this is actually what Europe is doing right now. Unfortunately, Europe is banking on this so-called Brussels effect, where they pass laws and then the rest of the world, as you know, when you're at Microsoft, has to comply with them even in other countries. We are starting to see the tech companies saying like, no, we're going to have two different versions of our products, one for Europe and one for the rest of the world. And what's going to happen is that Europe is going to fall behind. And another very big problem of this related to innovation that we haven't mentioned yet is that Europe has fallen behind in technology in the most egregious way. There's not a single major, top 10 tech company, a single, Apple alone is worth more than the entire, all, European tech companies together. And the sad thing, and I say this as an AI researcher that comes from Europe, is that until 10 years ago, Europe and the US were the leaders in AI. And now that it's starting to have a lot of impact, Europe has decided to basically shoot itself in the foot. And now, all these regulations, the large companies can comply with and find lawyers to get around with and not. And the only thing that has saved us from the GDPR is that most of it is dead letter because it's unenforceable. But for the startups, and I know people in startups in Europe who complain bitterly about this, this is just making life impossible for them. So the next, trillion, dollar tech company, the AI company, the great companies of the AI age are going to come from America and China, not Europe, largely because of this. Europe should be doing everything it can to make life easier for its AI startups, not harder.
That's actually the next topic I wanted to, I guess, wrap up on this particular area, which is the idea that at least until this AI Act is either modified or changed or abolished or replaced by something else, at least for the next couple of years. I mean, do you think that if you're an AI researcher or would be startup, you just exit Europe and you go to some place more AI friendly, like I guess Japan or the United States? I mean, is that the near term future for AI startups in all of Europe?
Well, first of all, this is already what a lot of Europe tech startups do, sadly. There are a lot of companies that start out in Europe, and as soon as they can, they move to America.
Mm.
Right? I mean, this is just shocking because your chances of success are so much greater here. I mean, a lot of it is the regulation and the red tape, and it's so much harder, it takes longer to do everything. Another one is the whole innovation, VC ecosystem, the whole idea that, failing is not bad, you can try again. I mean, Europe is making progress in that direction. There are various European countries with good, startup scenes. So, it's not like nothing's happening. But honestly, if I was thinking I'm going to do a AI startup, where shall I put it? Not in Europe.
Patrice,
Definitely not. And
Patrice, give me a scenario where you could somehow, if you could come up with a solution to stop the outflow of AI startups from Europe to other regions, and maybe somehow encourage them to, kind of stay in, local. Like, I mean, first of all, would you even make such a suggestion? If you did, like, what would you tell them?
Oh, I feel completely underqualified to make such a statement. I've only founded two startups. They were both in the US. There's uh, I would not know how to make a startup in Europe. I do not have the experience. I think I'm in the United States, but that decision was made long before AI. I've noticed that a, a lot of, I mean, it's true that, and it's actually interesting how many French-speaking people are involved in the some of the breakthrough in AI. And I don't know if it's by training or but a lot of my colleagues from, Joshua Benjo and Jan LeCun have had some of that training about machine learning and mathematics in Europe. So um, so I don't see borders, frankly, and I'm I don't know that the trend has accelerated because of regulation. I don't have the historical background to talk about that.
Well, what's interesting is Mistral, which is, I believe, based in France. I think they just got a 415 million in new funding, and they have models that are now being compared to OpenAI's ChatGPT. I think it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what does and doesn't happen with Mistral. One last thing I wanted to ask about the AI Act. One of the, I guess, guidelines is they're saying AI can't be used I guess, for social scoring. And this is kind of, I guess, a dystopian vision that some people refer back to when they think about China and kind of what they're instituting. Pedro, in particular, I'm curious what you think about this idea of, I mean, I guess you kind of referred to it a little bit earlier, but I mean, this idea of just hard, like a law that just prevents any kind of social scoring, rating people using AI. Do you think
well,
that's
actually,
feasible?
this is a very good example of something else I said, which is something should be legal or illegal in its own rights, not because AI is applied for it. Social scoring is a bad idea, whether or not it's done with AI. So if you're going to outlaw social scoring, which may be a good idea, let's get to that in a second, then you should outlaw it, not outlaw the use of AI for social scoring. What is the point of that? Right? So is social scoring legal, but using AI it's not? That makes no sense. And if social scoring is illegal, then why do you need to outlaw the use of AI for it? It makes no sense. If you don't want social scoring, just say no social scoring, and AI has nothing to do with it. Now, I think social scoring is as it's done in China is an evil thing, right? But you have to. But again, just to focus on that for a second, again, irrespective of the use of AI for it, it's one thing to have social scoring used by the state to keep people in line, which is what China does. And in particular, this thing that like part of my social score comes from the social score of my friends. So they have an incentive to keep me in line. And like, so, authoritarian regimes can make, unfortunately, very good use of AI for their, bad purposes. And they're doing it. We in the democracies need to make good use of AI to make democracy better. A lot of it involves things like that if the regulator decides to be generous with their definition, which what often happens, could be things that are actually good in terms of participation and whatnot, but winds up being inadvertently forbidden by social scoring laws. And again, it's very, social scoring as done by companies is all around us, right? Effectively, right? What is an influencer? Is someone with a high social score. And there's an economy growing around our influencers. So we need to make a very big distinction between these things as done by governments and for what purposes, and these things as done by private companies, which again, Europeans tend to a priori trust the government and distrust companies, and Americans are the opposite. I'm European, but I'm more on the American side. The most a company can do is try to sell me something. That doesn't scare me. A government can throw me in jail and kill me. That's a whole different can of worms.
Indeed, indeed. I wanted to ask you guys about, so earlier this month, there was an announcement from IBM and Meta of a new, I guess, coalition they're calling the AI Alliance. And included in this are universities from Asia, Europe, America, as well as two big AI companies, Hugging Face and Stability. And I guess yeah, I've seen this kind of like in my kind of past years, like kind of as people try to regulate or kind of create guidelines around the immersive like AR, VR industry. I've seen these coalitions kind of come and go. I'm wondering, do you think like with two big heavyweights involving all, and also I think the fact that they're involving all of these universities effectively kind of seeding, the playing field with students and young researchers, do you think this is a significant development? Do you think it's just is this strategic? Like, and I'm just curious, like what, because I haven't heard much about this, but I think it seems like a big deal.
It's important to see it in context, I think. So there is this, a fight happening in AI between the people who want closed AI and the people who want open AI. And OpenAI, the company, used to be in one camp, and then it's kind of moving to the other, sadly. The people who want closed AI are the people who say AI is dangerous, we have to regulate it, we have to put a few committees or something in control of the guardrails of AI, and it's a very top-down approach to AI. There's also and this is like a very a contentious debate right now, and very and big one. And there are some companies that have gotten behind this. Many people would say because it serves their purposes, right? If you're OpenAI or you Google, it helps you to own the technology to make it closed and put all these requirements. There is, on the other hand, a very large movement, and one of the leaders is Yann LeCun, which Patrice just mentioned. He's both, like one of the top pioneers of deep learning, and also, the chief scientist at AI scientist at Meta. And the contention of these people, and I completely agree with it, is that the way you keep AI safe is with open source. Software has taught us, which one is safer? Linux or Windows, right? It's like open source is having a million people finding out the faults and the bugs and the places where the black hats could get in. You keep AI safe by having many people look at it. So some people want open AI, some people want closed AI. I haven't looked at the details, but it seems to me that the intent of this coalition is to foster and defend open AI because it's in danger from these other coalitions that are trying to push closed AI. And I think there are many nuances in these issues, but some things are very clear. And one of them, I think, is that open AI is better than closed AI. And to their credit, for example, Sam Altman has repeatedly said this. He says the way you keep AI safe is by having many people look at it, is by, so a very concrete point on this is like, when you produce a new large language model like Mistral has done, for example, Mistral put out the model with no guardrails, like plaudits to them. OpenAI has had this thing, and this is actually what led to partly to Sam Altman's infamous ouster, is he wanted to push the products out. The others want to spend months and months, ensuring that it's safe, as if they could ever do that, right? 300 people can't make a large language model safe. It's a joke, right? 300 million people maybe can, right? So giving it to all of us is the way to go.
Patrice, thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the it's funny how the discussion started, because I'm definitely on the camp of not regulating the development of algorithm, the research. I mean, every time you try to slow down or limit innovation, it's always a bad thing. So we agree, and in some way we say it differently. I say that we have to, if we regulate, we have to regulate the behavior, not the way it's implemented. And I think Pedro, when he says that if we regulate, social monitoring, uh, whether it's implemented with AI or not doesn't really matter. We either regulate that, which is what I call regulating the behavior, rather than regulate the technology. Now, if the alliance is about open source, which I'm not sure it is, but maybe it is, then I think fostering academic collaboration, fostering openness, also. I mean, every time you don't have transparency, you foster abuse and incompetence. Every time you have transparency, you get more competence and less abuse. So it's always better to have transparency. Now, you cannot force transparency. That's also not that good for innovation, because some startup need a little bit of head start on their ideas without having to publish them right away, so that they can get some success that's not easily copied. But other than that, yeah. So on Alliance, I think in the case of academia and company putting their back into creating a platform with openness, I think all that is a good thing. I mean, I'm not sure how effective it is. That I reserve judgment.
Well, I wanted to ask you something about something Pedro said in a previous episode. Pedro, I went back and listened to our episode, and I really, I just wanted to just like kind of rethink everything you said, and this idea that, correct me if I, have it incorrect. This idea that the objective function in AI models is essentially what would prevent, I guess, dangerous situations arising. And in recent weeks, I've come across this term P doom, or probability of doom. And this kind of dovetails back to the OpenAI conversation with Sam Altman. There were rumors that perhaps they had discovered some sort of new level of AI, some super intelligence, or some just some next level. And this is maybe what prompted the board to seek his ouster. So, and I definitely want your comment on that, Pedro. But before I go there, I want to know what you think, Patrice, about this idea that the objective function in AI models might be the thing that is kind of like the, I guess, inherent safeguard, stopgap from anything dangerous coming to pass.
The steering wheel, I think, is the way I put it. The loss function is the steering wheel of the car. I completely agree with Patrice that you don't want to regulate the internals. How the engine of the car works is for the engineers. What everybody needs to know about to control AI is the loss function, or the objective function more generally.
I disagree that this is a safeguard. First of all, things we, we're already doing things like, if you look at um, stable diffusion, there are ways you can actually formulate it that don't seem like you control it with you control it with a steering function. Also, I think the steering function can evolve, and it can also be not what you think I mean, I don't know how many times I've implemented an algorithm thinking I was optimizing one thing and I was actually optimizing another. These are the and the steering function is all misleading because there are priors, there's all sort of ways to put knowledge into the system. One is the steering function, one is the data, one is the priors, and to think that it's that basically if you set the right steering function, you control the algorithm or the device or the model that you build. I think that's not exactly true. So I think AI will evolve. I think trying to control that evolution is pointless because we cannot control what people do in different countries. We cannot control what people do in their garage or their basement. The hardware enthusiasts, like probably certainly like me or probably Pedro and others, will have a Lambda machine in their basement and do experiments with AI, and that should not be controlled. So I think AI will evolve, and it will evolve beyond our control. And I think that's totally fine. I don't think this is something we should be scared of. I think it's something inevitable.
No, let's look at a couple of things here. First of all, in what I'm calling the objective function, priors are part of that. When you do Bayesian learning, you're optimizing the posterior of, which is the prior and the likelihood. Now, of course, then there's the data, right? And so you can, of course, the data is a whole world of things that a lot could be said about, right? But the point that I'm trying to make here, and I actually think it's a crucial one, is like, I think, so here's the question, right, that I think I was answering back then, and I think it's really the salient one today is like, as AI becomes a technology with wide impact, how, what I think one of the basic tenets is that there are certain decisions about AI that are not to be made by us, the technologists. I see a lot of people, a lot of our colleagues making the mistake of injecting their ideology, good or bad, into the products that they make. And that alarms me. We should say, here's your car, you drive it where you want, right? We should not try to drive the car on behalf of, say like, oh, get in, we know where you want to go, we'll take you there, right? I, as a user, am a little suspicious of that, right? Now, I think that now it's society, like the policymakers, the voters, etc., are perfectly entitled to say we want to have a say in how AI gets used, right? It's like everybody's right to do that, right? So assuming we agree on that, then the question is how. And now every machine learning system, broadly speaking, has three components: the representation, the optimization, and the evaluation function. The representation for general purpose AI is so broad that I don't think, there. I can make up cases, of course, where this would not be so, but like for something like an LLM, the representation contains no value judgments, right? What is a transformer left wing or right wing? That's a silly question, right? So the representation is not where we're going to go. The optimization isn't either. The optimization is just maximizing a function. And you're right. I mean, we know that things can go wrong in many different ways, but like this is like us, the mechanics, trying to make the engine work well. Where the policymakers, where the voters the thing they should know about is that like, the whole AI alignment problem really boils down to like, what should your objective function be? Which can include hard constraints, which are just terms with very large weight, right? So people should think about like, I want this system to be guided not just by maximizing engagement or click-through rate, but by these other terms. So this very practically is a good way for people to put whatever social goals they have, which will differ between countries and parties and whatnot, into AI, right? It's not a panacea. Now, another very important thing that you brought up, which I think is easily forgotten by a lot of people in AI, is that like, these objective functions today are just ridiculously dumb. It's literally maximize engagement, right? And of course, that has a lot of negative side effects. Now, I think the way this should be done, and I think it will be done and better be done, is that, like half of the job of the AI should be to learn what our objective functions are, right? Think of inverse reinforcement learning and things like that. The AI does, it's like the Midas problem, right? Or the Sorcerer's Apprentice. The AIs will do bad things not because they're evil, but because they're giving us what we told them we said we wanted, not real. It's like, drive me to the airport as fast as I can. Oh, by the way, don't run anybody over, right? Otherwise, it might run people over on the way to the airport, right? So the AIs need to spend a large part of their time modeling us to serve us better. So, part of the problem with AIs today is that you have these vast amounts of compute and data at the service of this incredibly pinheaded one-line formula, right? The AI needs to understand humans continuously, and we need to be monitoring the AI continuously. The right interface to do that, I would say, is the objective function.
But okay, so let me challenge this a little bit in the following way. Um, for me, I don't see human as a particular different machine than AI. It's some implementation. AI will be at the same level at some point. And so everything you say about objective function that applies to AI, we should also have a formulation to explain, how does it translate to driving humans and controlling the evolution of humans. So if we see it this way, then I have trouble reinterpreting what you're saying as hey, we have control, we have the objective function. It's really simple today, it will be more complex tomorrow. To some extent, when we look at a human, I don't know what objective function they optimize at that point. It's been selected, and I think there will be a selection of AI algorithm that will maybe select the objective function at some point, and there will be an evolution, and at some point, I'm not sure we will be able to pinpoint exactly what they're optimizing. And I
No,
think that's okay. But
well, let me answer that question, right? This is a good question, and I think there's a very concrete answer to it. But actually, first, AIs and humans are very different, and crucially in the following way is that we are supposed to be in control, and for the time being, most of us will want to be in control. There are some science fiction scenarios where that doesn't happen, but there's sort of like this very practical question of like, we humans being made however we are, being similar or different from the AI, we want to stay in control of what the AIs do. How should we do that? Now, so there's that key difference, right? You could imagine like it's like it could be humans and humans, right? Like so let me give you two answers to this. In a large company,
yeah,
you
so
have
let's
people
be
working for
clear that
people.
humans are completely um, they are powerless in controlling other humans, right?
No, 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 no.
I do you control your children? I
No. But like, okay, so that was so. Let me give you two examples. Actually,
yeah.
let me start with a simpler one. Everybody in a large organization, everybody in society has this problem. It's called the agency problem, right? You manage me. What you do is, for example, you give me objectives, you give me metrics, and then you monitor how well I achieve them. And of course, this is subject to all sorts of malfunctions. But God help us if you didn't have those, right? So in a way, all I'm saying is the same way you use metrics. Like the CEO of a company is there to maximize, the value of the stock, right? And so the same way that humans control each other, they can control AI in that regard. Now you said
Well,
like no, but like
but the
let me just say one
employees
more thing.
leave. There's all sort of mitigating factor that means you will not remain in control.
No, but yes, but of course, but like there's two parts to this. One is like what is the best we can do, and I'm saying, well, let's focus on these objective functions. But now here's something important to realize: our objective function as humans evolutionarily is fitness, is how many of us there are. And we are our genes, reproductive machines, as like as Richard Dawkins very well put it, right? And so you and I, we are controlled by our genes via our emotions. Our emotions are our objective functions, like maximize, pleasure, minimize, hunger, fear, etc., etc. So this, what I'm actually describing, is a similarity between how humans are controlled and how we should control AI, how we, as all animals, are controlled by our genes.
But okay, so that's perfect because the way I see it, right? So yes, I love the fact that you mentioned Dawkins and or Darwin and the evolution of genes. But the way I see it is, if I look at our speed of evolution, if you look 100 or 300,000 years, the size of the brain was maybe 30% less than. I'm not an anthropologist, but I've looked at information to figure out how long it took to increase our capacity or ability by 30%, and it's about 100,000 years. A computer does this in 1 year. If you approximate, and I may be off by one order of magnitude, but the number I start with is that AI and computers evolve at about 5 orders of magnitude faster for their capacity as humans. And if we see it as a species, and I define species very loosely as not, it has to be organic, but basically it has to be able to grow and be able to evolve. And AI satisfy both requirement as all the organic species. And now we have we have to face the fact that we have our species and we have another species that evolve at 5 orders of magnitude the speed. And I think it's a foregone conclusion where this is going to go. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as, but I see that as absolutely inevitable. And to think that we can control it, that we
No.
are the masters of it, that seems,
AI, well, but see, I mean, like, again, this is a point of debate, but AI is not another species.
why not?
AI, to go back to Richard Dawkins, is our like technology is our extended phenotype, right? You know this notion of the extended phenotype, like like the extended phenotype is parts of the world that your genes control that are not your body,
But I
like
think
C for Sam, or like
I think
like
that's a very narrow definition.
no, but wait a second,
And I think
you
it's crafted exactly to exclude AI, which is not the goal.
no. So like I let's just say, like, I'm going to do that myself. I'm going to say technology and AI in particular are the extended phenotype of humans. We have the biggest extended phenotype of everybody. And the point is, you can have extremely complex technology that is controlled by something much simpler. In fact, we are way more complex and intelligent than our genes, and we're still controlled by them, right? And in fact, the fact that AI is moving so much faster, which is very true, is actually an argument for this. Objective functions are precisely how a slow-moving process controls a fast-moving one to its advantage. Like, like our brains, right, can learn in a way
But
that genes
you
can't.
seem to imply that objective functions don't evolve as part of the evolution.
No, they do. They absolutely they evolve, but they evolve slower. And there's another very important point here, which is the following: like AI, right, is solving intractable problems, heuristically, or to be precise, NP-complete problems. The key characteristic of these problems is that checking the solution is exponentially easier than solving the problem. So the AI can be 10 to the 10 to the 10, faster than us. We can still control it because if it's solving NP-complete problems for us. And our decision is what are the problems that we want them to solve, and that's exactly the choice of what the objective function should be.
But what prevents them from choosing their own objective function and not even doing it consciously? Basically, there will be a selection, and at some point, there will
No,
be one that basically has its own objective function. And if it's successful,
I'll
then
tell you exactly what it is. So the AI is free to choose its sub goals, because that's what AI is for, and that's what we humans do as well. It's like we can choose our sub goals in ways that our genes couldn't possibly have foreseen. But the reason, let me give you an analogy. Dogs are wolves that we evolved to serve us, and machine learning is the same thing. It's selective breeding. As soon as the AI is starting to not optimize my goal, it gets pruned. This happens, millions of times a second.
I want Patrice, and I do know we have to wrap up, but Patrice, specifically with regard to that analogy, the dog wolf analogy, do you think it's? I mean, it seems like you have a fundamental disagreement on this point, but do you think that's a relevant, I guess, analogy?
oh, so I think I'm sure there are plenty of examples of things that we tried to evolve and that went and became pests and completely out of control. So I'm not, I have little faith that we're going to keep this, that because right now it's like being a parent. When your child is 5 years old, you feel like you're in total control. You control the objective function, you control the reward, you control absolutely everything. And then they turn 18, and then you realize that the control that you have is fairly limited. Your children can be smarter than you, they can know more than you, and I don't see why we believe that we're gonna. It's like young parents. Young parents thinks that their children will be very different, perfect, and everything, and it takes a while before they realize that they are not as much in control as they thought they would be. I think this is absolutely the lesson that we will learn in AI very quickly. Right now, AI is infant and we are in control.
It's a
But
bad analogy. Parents were never in control of their children, and the purpose of the children was never to serve their parents. The children serve their genes. They are controlled by their genes. The parents are just chaperones until the genes are ready to go out in the world.
why is AI different?
Because the AI is designed by us. We, again, like the children are controlled by genes, the AI is controlled by objective functions that we set for it.
But you don't have bugs in your code. I mean,
No,
yes, it's
Of,
designed by
of,
me.
of course we have bugs, but then
And,
the problem is the bugs, right? And again, like, of
but the
course there are
bugs,
tests and there are
the
many
bugs
things that
for you may be a feature for the AI and a feature that's advantageous, right?
no, but I mean, look, I understand your analogy, right? It's a valid one. Like, lots of things have gone bad, but still we have dogs, right? Dogs are good for us. They serve us, right?
We will
Look at,
still
I mean, like,
have
let
AI
me give you an
dogs.
even better
Fine.
example. Every livestock, every crop that we have is evolved by us to be much better than it was before. This is a massive success. Of course, there have been some failures, but they are insignificant compared to the success.
No, but I agree that we will have lots of success. What I disagree with is that you will remain in control. That I believe is fantasy.
I think we will remain in control, and this is actually a key point, for as long as we want to, if we
But
don't
wait,
slip
you
up.
don't control the AI that's happening in my basement. So you cannot control that AI. You cannot control what happens in other country. You cannot control.
No, no,
So,
well, very
so
good
there
point.
will be an AI that evolve that you do not control.
No, well, so there's so we are actually getting to a very important question, is like, who controls the AI, right? But like, my AI, if I set its objective functions, I control it. You control your AI, and of course, the whole future of the next 100 years is going to be different organizations, countries, people, and the AIs they control, right? Me with my extended phenotype, and you with your extended phenotype, and America and China with their extended phenotypes. This is where, and and sometimes things will go, sometimes things will go bad, but like, our job is to try to minimize the chances of it going bad. The big things that go
Sure.
bad will be AI screwing up and not screwing up with AI. It will not be that the AI suddenly now decides that it wants to be in power,
No,
because we never put
I
that in.
agree with that. That's not what worries me. I think if AI evolved to have any kind of power and start being afraid, they will be afraid of other AI, not humans. So I'm not. I actually don't fear, uh, uh, a conflict between AI and humans. That's not the way it's going to turn out.
So,
Um,
so what is it you fear then?
Oh, what I fear is that there's one way to prevent AI from evolving is to, if the human race was to disappear before AI is sufficiently evolved, then maybe we wouldn't have AI until the next species of intelligence can create a new kind of AI, right? So my fear is more that the humans will, the P of doom of human without AI is larger than P of doom with human. Sorry, P of doom with AI.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think if AI can evolve to a certain, and I think it's going to happen within 50 years, at some point AI will evolve their own AI. At this point, I'm not sure we can claim any control. There will be a survival, a selection, a growth selection where, and evolving for AI is more complex because we are used to have a lifetime and then we reproduce and basically we get supplemented by our genes being passed to the next generation. AI could potentially be immortal. It's the same program that runs indefinitely, but the evolution happens through software and software update and partial software update. So we would have to think about what evolution means for this new species, which you think we shouldn't call a species. But the yeah, I see this as inevitable, and if you have an argument that says that it's not inevitable, I would love to hear it because I've been thinking about this and I cannot come up with an argument that with a species which and I think my definition of species is inclusive enough and useful enough to include AI as a species. And with a species that evolve at 5 orders of magnitude faster than us, I think it's a foregone conclusion how it's going to end. And I
Well,
don't think
I mean,
I don't see it as a
the
bad thing.
argument is the argument that I've been making. But let me just so first of all, I very much agree that P of doom without AI is greater than with, and that's precisely why all these attempts to stop AI are actually counterproductive. They're making the world riskier, not less.
But,
But I
but,
think
but I want to make sure that at the beginning of this thing, it looked like I was defending controlling the evolution of AI, which I'm absolutely not. Right? I don't want to regulate AI. I want to regulate maybe potential behavior that are now possible with AI that weren't possible before, and this is why they need intervention. I believe that AI will evolve. I think trying to stimulate that evolution or that innovation in AI is absurd, and it's like putting a ball in a chain on your ankle because everybody else will have an advantage if we try to prevent AI from evolving. So I think I'm totally anti-regulating how AI is researched or developed, and I believe that it's futile to try to do so. So not only it's bad for whoever is doing it, but I think it's futile in the final goal that you will achieve.
well, there's one view which you seem to share, which is a minority view right now, but it's apparently Larry Page's view and the point of contention with Elon Musk that led to the founding of OpenAI, right? Is that AI will supersede us, and it's a good thing because human beings are not the end of evolution, and AI will be better than us, and maybe that'll come to pass, right? I think that point of view is probably more people will believe it as time goes forward. But here's the thing, right? I think we as humans should be extreme. Actually, let me share another fear, which is not a big one these days, which is that we humans will prematurely hand control to AI that we think it's great. I'm much more afraid of humans handing control to AI of their own accord than of AI seizing control, because humans are prone to handing control to other humans and therefore AI and to God and whatnot because they think it's so smart when in fact it's still quite stupid. So I think before humans decide that yes, AI is going to, carry the banner, I think, it'll be thousands of years before that happens. And at least in my view, right, you should always leave a few billion humans around just to be sure, right? Even in that scenario.
Well, I think that's a good point for us to wrap up. This has been fascinating. This has been a brilliant exchange. I really appreciate. I think if we can kind of like agree that you both agree that open source AI is definitely the way forward, at least.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I don't think that will be the only thing. There will be, I think, both open and close can coexist. So I don't have a strong opinion that we should make everything open source.
No,
But
no,
some people do.
just to be clear, I am definitely not saying everything should be open source. Again, as you say, certain things need to be closed. But the battle right now is to allow open source to exist versus
Oh,
forcing everything
absolutely.
to be closed. That is what is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And that on that we can all agree. Thank you again, Patrice Simard, Pedro Domingos. I really appreciate you joining us on the 100-Year Podcast. You can read some of Pedro's thoughts more in depth about the objective function and the future of AI in the latest edition of the 100-Year Lens, which is our newsletter at 100year.substack.com. And you can also check out previous episodes of the podcast, also available on audio and video on 100year.com. Gentlemen, I really appreciate it. I was sitting back thinking this needs to happen more often. We need to see this exchange more often because I think you are both in the position to kind of help us see through a lot of the, I guess, the noise that people are sending out into the ether about this topic. So thank you again, both.